So Guru Nanak Dev Ji grew up as a very inspired man and very connected to the divine, so that people who interacted with him felt that expansiveness of God just by having conversations with him. So he was spending his time with yogis, spending his time with sadhus, spending his time with anybody who would talk to him about God. Now, this is something that we look at and admire, but it is not something his father admired. And so in discussion with the city elders, he decided to go ahead and marry Nanak and just push him into the life of a householder so that he can start understanding the pressures and the discipline of a householder's life. So he was married to his wife, Mata Sulakni, and they moved to Sultanpur, which is where his sister, Bibi Nanaki, lived with her husband. Sultanpur was ruled by the Nawab Lodi, and he commanded that whole village area. And Bairam was working for him, so he was able to get Nanak a job in Sultanpur. And so Guru Nanak set up household there. He worked for the Nawab and worked in the granary. So as people brought in their tax payments, which would be in grain or animals or farming products, then Nanak would receive them, write them in the ledger, and put them into the granary. But of course, he still had that connection to the divine. So as he was sitting there doing his work, he would get lost into the love of God. There's a beautiful story of him counting the grain coming in, and when he hits Tera, Tera is also the word for, yours. He would get lost in repeating that, Tera, Tera, Tera. And meanwhile, who knows what happens with the accounting. So it came to the attention of the Nawab that there was some problems with the accounting. So when he called Guru Nanak in and asked to do an audit of the accounts, it turned out that not only everything was in the storeroom, but more, and that there was actually an excess there. And again, this is like those miracles that we talk about, that when a holy man is connected to that divine energy, that materials come and go according to the will of God. So this is where he lived, and during this time period, he had 2 sons. When he was 25, his first son was born, Siri Chand. And when he was 27, his second son was born, Lakshmi Das. So Siri Chand and Lakshmi Das were the sons of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Guru Nanak still spent most of his time in meditation, and he had a reputation in Sultanpur for being a man of God. People used to come from many parts of India, especially from Talwandi, where he was born, to work in Sultanpur, and they would contact Nanak to be able to get a job with the Nawab. And one of those people was Mardana, who was a musician, and he played the rabab. And so instead of getting a job with the Nawab, Nanak asked him to be with him. And so Mardana was with Guru Nanak Dev Ji from his 20s. Guru Nanak Dev Ji would start his day every day with a bath in the river, where he would chant God's name and offer his day to bless his day in the river Bain. It's called Kali Bain because it ran silent and black at this spot where it goes through Sultanpur. So one day when Guru Nanak Dev went to the river, he took his clothes and left them in a pile on the river bank. He had an attendant with him who watched his clothes, and he went into the river. But unlike other days, he didn't come out. So his attendant waited and waited, and when the sun was up and the day was fully on, he realized that Guru Nanak Dev was not coming back, and so he rang the alarm. Everybody came to the river to see what happened to Guru Nanak. he must have drowned. He must have died. And so the divers went into the river looking for him, and they searched the riverbanks, and he could not be found. For 3 days and 3 nights, he was not found. And we hear from the stories that are written in the Janam Sakhis, Guru Nanak Dev Ji talks very specifically about what happened. He said there was a portal, and that the angels, the Saviks, brought him to this portal. He went through the portal and met directly with a Kalpurak, with the energy of God. And in that experience, God gave him a cup of Amrit and asked him to drink from it. And he said, I am Parmeshwar. I am the formless God. And you are the Guru. You are the Guru of the world. And he asked him to drink this nectar. So he drank the Amrit from the cup and agreed to go and be the Guru of the world. 3 days later, he just appeared. They just found him, and he came to his house. He was silent. He didn't even have words to speak. Whatever the experience was so dramatic that he couldn't even form the words on his lips. The first thing he did was take everything out of his house and give it to the poor. And so he gave away everything. And after 48 hours of silence, he speaks out, there is no Muslim, there is no Hindu. Those were the first words out of his mouth. And those that heard him understood. They were confused at what he said, but with the energy that he brought with it, they understood that he was talking about a reality that superseded religion, that superseded dogma, that there was an essence of humanity that is above all of those. And this is what the gift that was given to him by Parameshwar, by a Kalpurak. And so from that time onward, he dedicated his life to serving and teaching people. There's a great story of one of the first things that happened was when the Muslims heard that he had said this. They said, that there's no Hindu, there is no Muslim. They said, okay, well, if you are this way, then come pray with us at the mosque. And he said, I'd love to, which was unheard of for a high caste Hindu to do. So he came to the mosque, and they were all praying, and as is the tradition of Islam. But Guru Nanak just stood there, and he didn't participate in that way. And after the prayers were done, they confronted him, and they said, you came here to our mosque, but why didn't you pray? And he said, I was praying. I was in reverence with the Almighty One. Why weren't you praying? And they said, but we were praying. He says, no, you were thinking about your store and the work that you needed to do there. And you were thinking about your wife and your children. He said, so if your mind is with them and it's not with God, then what use is this? And instead, this is the stories that I love, because instead of being angry with him, you could understand if somebody did that today. They would they would touch a bone of fanaticism, and it would bring anger out at them. But instead of being angry, because of the softness of his words, the energy of his voice, they understood and they accepted it, and they became devotees of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And so this is part of the miracle of Guru Nanak, really, is that the Bani that we have from Guru Nanak, those words that come directly from him, when you read those are on such a high level of vibration that it's beyond the words. It's beyond the meaning of the translation. And it goes right into the essence of what the reality of it is.